Hello and welcome to another one. It's your host Dre, and just wanted to share some of my thoughts on recent events as the dust has kind of settled on the weekend. I would have done this a little bit sooner, but it's been a couple of tough days. For those who don't know, uh, kboy Joe has dropped out of the race. And endorsed his VP Kamala Harris. And in the aftermath of that, a lot of Democrats have endorsed her and kind of hopped on board. I initially thought we may be headed for a contested and open convention, but I think much less so now. I think that there's a very slim chance of that happening. And then Kamala, to give her some credit, she made a very Machiavellian move. She put out a short list of VP candidates, and she named some of her most likely. I'm not gonna say name, but all this is leaked, of course. But some of the people who are best positioned to challenge her on that supposed short list. So I think she did a good job there of getting the establishment to at least pause, or rather challengers to pause on making a challenge towards her. In the aftermath of it, some interesting things happen. Like, for instance, amazing fundraising day. In particular, by the Greek letter brothers. I believe it was over 1.3 million was raised that on Sunday afternoon. And this is really kind of where I'm going. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. I consider myself, even though I'm a registered Democrat, I just really don't feel the need to go and change how I'm registered. I registered as a Democrat when I became 18. I just never bothered to change it, even though I have not voted Democrat for quite some time. And I feel that the problems that Biden had, Kamala largely doesn't share, and that she does put Democrats in a much better position, especially for the down ballot races. She herself is not the albatross around the party that Biden was. Where I feel her hurdles is in her presentation, in speaking. So, aside from the record, which, if you know of some of the things she did in California, you know her record is very mixed, and there's some legitimate questions that need to be asked of her. So I in particular am never the person that's like, hey, coronate or crown this particular person just because they're a name or they're not somebody else. I believe in actually doing politics. But all of that aside, I see for her the thing being her presentation, how she is known to kind of flub things and kind of hasn't been very quick on her feet. She is very much a prosecutor. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when she's on the offensive, she can be very aggressive and she can stick it at someone. She doesn't get hit well. Or she don't know how to roll with the punches very well. So one particular area that I'm curious to see how Trump handles is her record, in particular with Republicans making it play for frankly black men's vote along with other minorities. I could see where Trump threads this really crazy needle of highlighting that instance in California where there were thousands of black men who were basically they were given their freedom, but Kamala as AG refused to release them and basically had to be coerced into releasing these men. I could see a world in where, because keep in mind, Trump did the First Steps Act. I can see a world in where Trump simultaneously hits her and tries to paint her as, I guess you would say, super liberal, soft on crime, but also corrupt and crooked in how she dealt with things and highlighting that as a particular instance. And I'm not 100% sure how that would land or, play out per se. But I do think it's a potential area that could trip her up, in particular because for those who remember during the 2020 debates, I believe it was Tulsi kind of hit her along those lines about that record, that part of her record. And then on top of that, there's been several statements that I, as a black voter, I find problematic, or at least I probably should use that word. Yeah, I'm going to say it, problematic. And I feel, and I say this as she is a sister in terms of fraternity and sorority, as an AKA, I'm willing to hold space for her, to allow her to explain what she means. But even though I think she's already fleshed it out well enough, when she said, I'm not going to do anything just for black people, when she goes on with Steve Harvey and co-signs him saying that black people, you aren't going to get anything, my question then becomes, why should I vote for you? I don't vote for anybody out of obligation. That's honestly really why I haven't voted for very many Democrats in the last decade. So at the end of the day, on top of that, I feel we as black Greeks in particular, being part of the NPHC, it's one thing to hold somebody account. It's another thing when that person is inside your house. And if there should be somebody that we could hold accountable, that we could nudge in particular directions, that we could get some tangibles from, it should be her. And just because you got letters, just because there's organizational ties, that to me is not an implicit cosign. I'll be real. There are a lot of alpha men. There are a lot of alpha men that they couldn't get nothing from me. And conversely, there's a lot of great brothers who have shown and demonstrated their character, and I would support all day long. So it matters your character, it matters your record, and it matters what you want to do. And we as voters, but in particular us as Greeks, need to be asking the right questions instead of blindly pledging. Because this whole, I'll be frank with you, I have heard next to nothing in terms of policy. And granted, I will say this, it was fuckboy Joe on the campaign trail. And pretty much all he was saying is, I'm not Trump. I need a clear, articulate vision of what you want to do and where you want to move the country. And in particular, how are your policies going to affect young black boys, men, women, and girls? How is it going to tangibly benefit and improve their lives? In particular, I'm from a poor little town in South Carolina. One of the things I think about a lot is, how are the people back home possibly going to be affected by some of the things these people are talking about? But all that being said, I feel that, one, Democrats are going to try to somewhat build in an out for her, should things not look too well. But, as the campaign gets underway and she starts to get into the fire of things, I think we'll really see how she fares as a candidate and how the national attitude is around her. There is a hesitancy around Trump, just because Trump is such a polarizing character, and especially with a lot of a rhetoric around him, like with Project 2025. I'll be frank, Project 2025 doesn't scare me. Not because it's some BS and whatnot. There are a lot of things in there that can be done. Some things I think are very impractical. Essentially, the whole notion of a president and whatnot. If you neuter the administrative state, you neuter the president. So this whole concept or notion that, so many of these government agencies are just going to be wiped away, I don't see that as feasible, practical, or even doable. Because at that point, you've eliminated the power, a large degree of the power of the president. But there are so many items in Project 2025, and that's probably a video for another day. That might be something to partner with some of the other intelligent brothers on. But at the end of the day, I put it like this: America's always been racist. America's always done messed up things. And if I do see it this way, if Trump were to win and try to enact that thing, I think it would fail spectacularly. Not only would it fail spectacularly, I think you would then have a country that would be so seething, so angry, that they would truly demand tangible change, not a brown or black face doing the same things that all the other white supremacists did before them and whatnot, but true, actual change from a policy perspective that actually tangibly improves the lives of everyday Americans. And I'll simply say this before anybody tries to say I'm this, that, and the third. No, I'm not a Republican. A damn sure not a Democrat. I'm a true independent. And if you wanted to know where my political sensibilities are, I consider myself a man without a party. you could say I'm a New Deal Democrat. And the Democrats now are Republicans, and the Republicans are fucking crazy. So, yeah. There's very little policy position in that I see of worth in either party. The things I see that I marginally agree with are things that are on the fringe, and I'm not going to be swayed by small baubles. And that's why I vote. And that's why I vote generally for third party, or I'll write somebody in. And I would encourage a lot of people who feel disaffected to do the same. Not because, magically this election cycle, somebody else is going to win besides a Republican or a Democrat, but simply from this standpoint. You don't have to win to win. If either of those parties see that there's this large group of people who are disaffected, whoever's closest to them are going to begin to try to engage those voters and adopt some of those key tenets of their platform. And what you'll really have is probably a splinter faction, i.e. like the Tea Party, who begins to embody those, push those ideals, and then in time they will fold back into the larger party, and the larger party will forever be changed and pulled in that direction. Or if they're retards, that faction will gain more and more popularity until they reach a point in which they're able to really mount a substantive challenge and replace whatever party that is. That's how we got Democrats and Republicans. Like, they aren't our first political parties in this country, if you don't know. You had the Federalists, you had the Whigs, so on and so forth. But yeah, hope you all have a great day, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and definitely share your thoughts down below about some of my comments, especially if you're a Black Greek, and what I said about holding our own, demanding things of our own. Like, do you agree with me, or am I just a crazy guy on the stoop? Thank you, and hope you have a great one.